when you don't know what to wear. Vans.
Vans is always a good option.
That's how we're going to start this whole thing off. Welcome to the Creative Corner Podcast. My name is Noah Black. I'm your host, and just want to say welcome, whether you're watching through YouTube, whether you're streaming through Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I want to encourage you, no matter what platform, be sure to subscribe, keep up to date with all that stuff. And I have a really, really special guest with me today. It is a very good friend of mine. It is Mr. Hayden Fletcher, a.k.a. Hey Breezy.
What's up, Noah? Thanks for inviting me, man.
Of course, dude. Of course. Well, Hayden, for those of you who do not know him, one, like I said, he's a very incredible friend of mine. We've been really close friends for quite a few years now. But also he's a talented photographer. He's been dabbling in a lot of things with graphic design. But then also, you're a sponsored disc golfer now, right?
Yeah, I am. If I can give a quick shout out to my
Do
sponsor.
it, man.
If you don't know, Another Round Disc Golf in Charlotte, they're awesome. If you do love disc golf, I encourage you to go check them out. And they've been a terrific sponsor so far. Yeah. And I can't wait to see how the season goes. My first tournament with them didn't go so well as I hurt my back, but they were super encouraging with the injury and stuff like that. So, and getting some cool stuff and test out, and I'm excited, man.
Yeah, that's really cool. What I would love for you to, let's just dive right into that for a second. Talk a little bit about like what got you into disc golfing, what got you into it to where you are now, like being able, like you're going, and you had a bad first tournament experience, but like apart from that, what got you into it and what got you to where you are right now?
So what got me into it was, and it's cool that I guess we're talking about it because at our church, groups are getting ready to start back. Yeah. And that's what got me into it. A friend of ours just signed me up and was like, hey, I would really like you to come play. And it went all either uphill or downhill from there. But I enjoy it. It's good therapy for me to get out there with either friends or by myself, listening to music. And there's just something about the way the disc flies. It's just so
soothing,
so cool. And even though you might smack a tree 10 feet in front of you, and some not so good words come out of your mouth, but it's fun. I love it. And of course, the Charlotte scene in disc golf is super awesome. They're super encouraging. So
it's cool, man.
And even I was doing bad at the tournament. My card mates were super awesome and super cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. And what I think is really cool from an outside perspective of somebody that doesn't play disc golf actively or anything like that, I've seen it's been really cool of just in a church environment, like how much people come through the disc golf group and really, really love it and are a huge fan of it. But then also just like hearing about other churches that are similar with ours or whatever, they have those and they those groups thrive, and it seems like it's such an addictive thing for people.
It really is.
That it's like you don't have to be incredibly good at it at the start, but it just becomes something. Even for me, like I don't go out and do courses, but I mean just to sit, like people. A lot of our friends have the nets, and we'll just throw them in and stuff and stuff like that. It's really cool, man. So it's been cool to see like the interaction there. But talk about a little bit more. You mentioned at the beginning, but with the tournament, your first tournament experience as a sponsored player.
Well, it made up for a bad day, I think, because it was raining so much throughout the week, and I'm sitting there like, do I even want to play this tournament? Yeah, because I hate playing in the rain. But I was like, kept looking at the forecast, and I was like, well, maybe it'll clear up and it'll be fine. It never did. So when I got to the course that morning, it wasn't raining, but it was super, super, super muddy. Right. Almost to the point of unplayable, but I got to give a shout out to Devin Grady, who made the tournament. He did awesome with it, and I'm excited to play more tournaments with him, but I was not a happy camper that morning. Not only getting up early, I mean, we get up early anyway for church, but going in there and sitting in the rain and the cold. Yeah. I just knew something wasn't going to go good, but I had a okay first round and went to go get to my car, ate me a little snack, try to catch a few Z's while I had like a 2-hour break. And I didn't get to take a nap because things just kept distracting me. So, and then when I was warming up for the next round, went into the field that they had, the little baseball field, throw some shots. to get my arm warmed back up. I planted, slipped, overextended, and pulled a muscle in my back. And I was like, this was like right before I started. So I was like, I can't sit down. I just got to go with it and see maybe walking around would loosen it up. And, but bending down, picking up the disc, and that part of the course we were playing second round is just so hilly, and it was muddy. Yeah. That I was like, I got about 3/4 of the way. I'm like, I called the TD and was like, yo, I can't finish. No. So I literally just like walked from where I was, which was not a short walk at all. Yeah. And went right to the car, had to sit down about halfway through because my back was killing me. Yeah. And then got to my car and went home, and then had to finish my buffalo chicken dip for the Super Bowl.
That's so funny. But yeah, you'll hear Hayden and I mention talking about church, and we've mentioned like groups at our church and stuff. But just to give everyone a little bit of backstory, like one, me and Hayden you were actually friends with my brother in high school. Like and then I was just like a really shy kid that was a lot of grades younger than you.
Yeah, I always used to say that I was like, that's just Tyler's weird younger brother. Yeah. And now like tables have turned. Of course, me and Tyler are still really good friends. I love that guy to death. But it is kind of like roles reversed, and I started hanging out with Noah more because he kind of came out of his shell. Yeah,
I got louder.
Definitely, you got louder.
But then it ended up. I'm on, for those of you that are connected with me, I'm on staff at a church called Propel Church in Mount Pleasant, and it's all completely thanks to this guy. So if anybody from Propel is watching, it's 100% because of Hayden, the reason why I started coming. But I got to a place where I was like done with church, had a lot of like really bad experiences and stuff, and so I was about to just completely be done. And sure enough, that week before the Sunday experience, Hayden invites me and is like, hey, man, so you should come. I'm getting baptized. Would love for you to come and hang out. And I came, and then I remember walking through the doors, and God was like, this is where I want you to be. And I remember like wrestling with God for a little bit of like, I'm just kind of done with church, but then was like, hey, just because like there's been bad church experience in the past doesn't mean that all churches suck and that all churches are bad, but it's that whenever you get together with a group of people like this that love each other so much, is where life change happens. And ever since then, man, I've been there, and so it's all thanks to Hayden for that.
And it wasn't really, of course, I wanted to invite him to church because I knew something was going on. But it was the fact that we also needed a drummer. So just logistical side, I guess.
Practical and relational.
I was like, hey, you should come to the church. Let's hope that he likes it and we'll become a drummer. Sure enough, it worked.
Yeah, sure enough. But yeah, and now, I mean, we're still kicking. Like we're able to serve together. I'm able to lead the worship and production team, and Hayden freaking crushes it on cameras and a lot of other stuff in production. And so what have you found about being connected? Because you've had previous church experience, and you've been around. You've been in areas where like some churches are very like where you have people who want to avoid church because of the bad stigma with it, and you've experienced those unhealthy environments. But being in a church setting where it is a healthy environment where people really love each other, it's not about like trying to set this perfect expectation, but also pushing each other to like get better and to grow stronger in their relationship with God. What have you seen to benefit in that type of environment compared to others?
Well, I mean, like with my church background, I was at just a church that like nobody really knew anybody because it was kind of a bigger church, and it didn't used to be like that because when the former pastor was there, he pretty much knew everyone's name, right? Which I think that's awesome for a pastor to be so engaged with the congregation. But then when they moved to a different building on campus and they got a new pastor, it just kind of felt a little distant. And then when I came to Propel Church, I literally thought somebody was going to stab me and take me out and sacrifice me. Because I'm like, there's no way people are this nice.
There's a catch to it.
Yeah, there's got to be something. And I was kind of in the same place that Noah was. I was just kind of done with church. And I'm like, because I'm not getting anything out of it. Like, why am I going on Sunday? Yeah. And I had just like recently, like a year or so before that, gave my life to Christ. So yeah, still kind of new to the scene, and was like church hopping and came in, and it was just awesome. But God has done some wonderful things in my life. Kind of brought me out of my shell a whole lot. Like I probably wouldn't even do this right now if it wasn't for Propel Church, because I am a serious introvert.
Yeah.
And so like being there and just getting to know everybody, and everybody's so loving, because I always said, like, you can, no matter what you're struggling with, there's somebody in that congregation that is struggling with the same thing and is willing to help you.
Yeah.
No matter what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just super amazing, and seeing it grow. I've been there almost since the very beginning.
Yeah.
From there wasn't like 40 people at a service to now we're averaging 200.
Yeah, close to it. Yeah.
Just seeing that and moving into our permanent home, that was so awesome.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome, like renovating it, and where it's like funny because me and Noah went to middle school there.
Yeah.
And now we're leading a church that in the same building, and then stepping into leadership over the team, over some people, and it's just been awesome.
Yeah.
I look back and I'm like, I don't deserve this.
Right. Yeah.
But
for sure.
But I know that this is what God has for me,
Yeah.
and it makes me super excited. Like I'm super excited to get up in the morning and go to church.
Yeah, I love that. I remember I shared with our church a few weeks back. There's a moment where we're currently, right now, while we're filming this, we're currently meeting in our gym because our auditorium right now doesn't have heat and air ventilation. We're working with companies to get that taken care of, and it's been a really crazy process. But we've been meeting in the gym as an alternative, especially because COVID, like, is an airborne virus. Like, there's no way you can meet in a room that has no functioning like air, and so meeting in the gym. And there's a really cool moment back whenever I was in middle school, in between my 7th and 8th grade year, was whenever I gave my life to Jesus at a camp. And then I remember coming back to school and like figuring out, what does that look like for me as a Christian now? Like, there's this difference. And then I remember being in the gym one day, and then they had the whole, like, if you didn't dress out, you had to go like sit back in the back or do something. Yeah. And you had like points, like participation points deducted. And so there's one day I didn't dress out, and I went and sat in the designated spot, and then this kid, same situation, didn't dress out. He came and sat beside me. I was reading my Bible. He was asking me all sorts of questions. And then I told him about like what I experienced that summer of giving my life to Jesus. And then he just goes, whatever, like, to sum up like a long story, to sum it up in just a sentence, he was like, whatever it is that you have, I want it. And so was able to
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, was able to lead my first person to Jesus as a Christian. And what's crazy is now we're meeting in that same gym, but right where I stand on Sundays to lead worship, the weeks that I'm scheduled to lead worship, is the same spot where I was able to lead that person to Jesus.
That is awesome.
It's a really cool, like, full circle, like, God, this is where I started my journey, and by no means is this the end of my journey, but it's cool to be in
like
the
you're
positioning.
circling back, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to be that, and that place that I went to middle school at, that I built the foundation, that God had just really allowed people to pour into my life in those years at that school, is the same place that I'm able to be on staff at now. And so it's a really cool full circle moment for sure.
Well, I definitely didn't have the same problem of not dressing out for PE, because, I mean, I may not look it, but I love being active, and just... I didn't have that problem.
Yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, but it's been really cool for sure to like be able to serve in the same church together, to be able to build with each other, just you and I one-on-one, and then we hang out outside of that. And so it's a really cool and then plus, like, on top of that, you're best friends with my fiance's brother, and so we're always gonna have that connection.
Unfortunately. I'm kidding, I love you, Dylan.
but so me and Hayden, we just have a lot of different ties together, and so it's been really cool. But here's the place where we really connect on for a moment. So what's crazy is you'll hear us talk about, now we just talked about like church background, and we talked about all this stuff, and so you may look at us and be like, man, you only like listen to worship music, or you only listen to
if you pay attention to my hoodie, you know that's false.
So just the segue into that, we got some new music coming out, and I brought up, there's the podcast that's releasing this Saturday of when we're filming this. I had Aaron and Tyler on, and we talked about different music from 2020. That was incredible. What was you're a huge, like, heavily invested in the music guy, like study things in depth, whatnot. What were some of your favorite releases from 2020?
Man, there was so much. Like, if you pay attention to my Instagram, I always at the end of the year post my favorite albums. of 2020 or of the year, and I actually had this gentleman right here make my graphic, which looked incredible. It actually has me at a show screaming into the mic. But I think like my top three, if I had to sum it up, was How to Survive a Funeral by Make Them Suffer was my number one. Number two was Lorna Shore's new album, Immortal, because I've gotten into like the really heavy stuff, like that deathcore type stuff. It's incredible how those vocalists do it. And I think number three was Tickets to My Downfall by Machine Gun Kelly, kind of switching up to pop punk, but it was also incredible.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how we can go from a conversation talking about like incredible life change within church and then switch it over to metal music and stuff. So we've talked about one-on-one, but I want the people to hear your input. With those incredible metal bands, what is it that you miss the most about going to shows right now?
Mosh pits. I mean, I know like the last concert, I don't know about Noah, but the last concert I went to was we went together is to see Ice Nine Kills, who is my favorite metal band right now, and Fit for a King, who is my second favorite metal band.
That's my favorite metal band.
And it was just incredible. I mean, like we're hopping in the mosh pit. I lost my watch, so you know that was going hard, and I didn't really mosh a whole lot during Ice Nine Kills because I wanted to kind of sit back and actually watch it. Because if you've ever seen a live show by them, it's super theatrical.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they literally sit there and rehearse it before their tour because they need to make sure they're in the right spot at the right time. So, like, Spencer doesn't get blasted by pyrotechnics or whatever. And just like with, like, him dressing up as Michael Myers, don't want to hit somebody with a knife, one of the guitarists or whatever. Yeah. And so... but missing concerts, just missing the community because the Charlotte disc golf scene, but the Charlotte metal community is super incredible.
It's like a family.
Like I remember seeing Noah in the mosh pit at Ice Nine Kills. I just see him go down and somebody literally picks him up, smacks him on the back, and is like, "Let's go."
Yeah. I remember it's so funny to be like the first time I ever got in a mosh pit of like you're freaking out of like, am I going to get decked in the face? Which, to be real, if you don't come out with a black eye, did you really have a good experience this show?
Yeah, because I've knocked out the bloody nose. The guitarist was crowd surfing, and I got kicked in the head, and I think I had a concussion that night.
Yeah, but I remember that show in particular. I had, like you said, there was a part where I got like knocked down, and I see this dude like charging at me. That like I'm a small guy, and this dude is easily the size of a water buffalo, and just starts charging at me, and I'm freaking out. And so this other dude like lifts me up as fast as he can, like hits me on the back, is like, "Let's keep going," and then like blocks this guy that's about to run into me. But it's really funny, man. I'm a huge. I cannot wait. I've told my brother this. Like, he's the guy that I go to talking about all this kind of stuff of, like, the day that, like, concerts return, like, I will wait and put every other concert off just to go to a metal show. Just because I want to, like, that type of stuff, man. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and I know with, like, the live streams being the norm now, I watched Silent Planet's live stream, and, I mean, that was incredible how they produced it. And just everything, like the experience.
Right.
But that was my first one. So I'm like, I might just watch more if concerts aren't a thing for a while.
Right.
This is the best we got. And it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's nothing more exciting than being there and listening to music in person. But it's still nice to see, like, as production guy, just like I have a knack for that. Like seeing how are they doing it. And
for sure.
It's awesome to see.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure that's easy ways to find inspiration for stuff like for the future and everything. And so I love that. So with the year as a whole, like it's obviously like you miss being able to do shows. Like it's just a total culture shock. Like we're having to do everything different than the way we did before pre 2020. But even on top of that, like there's been a lot of stuff like your year. Like if you look back a year ago, like it's been a big like life change situation for you, like through different avenues. What's been some key moments that have impacted you out of 2020, but then also what's some areas that you've been able to find hope in, like moving forward into the rest of this year?
So my big thing is like what shaped it and molded me in 2020 is it's kind of negative, but I don't mean to be negative. But in the beginning of the year, I lost my job due to the pandemic and just cutbacks and just having to get on unemployment and finding other avenues.
Right.
And luckily, we were in the middle of remodeling a church, so I was able to at least do something.
Right.
Instead of sit at home and sulk, I could at least go and paint something or whatever. At least I had that. And then later in the year, my father passed away unexpectedly. But looking back at it, it still sucks. But it's brought me, it's kind of bringing like the leadership side out of me because like I'm the man at my house now. So that side of me is already coming out. Like I'm being logistical and getting stuff done. Like, oh, I can't blow money on this because I need to do this.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of helping me grow as a person.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, even though it sucks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to hit on that, I think I've not been in a position to lose like a parent, but being so close to you, like walking through the situation with you. I mean, it's a sucky situation. Like it's terrible. But to see how you've grown in it and you've allowed opportunity to be shaped in it. Like you've done an incredible job of like, hey, I'm going to keep pressing on. I'm going to keep like learn from this. And like, I've seen you, like your spirits like are a lot more lifted. Like you've found positives in a lot of situations more. And so, I think it's inspiring, like to say the least, of like how incredible it is through that. And so what would you say like a big thing that you learned through that situation for anybody out there that has like lost somebody that's really, really close to them? What's something that has helped grow you in that?
Well, I mean, obviously my relationship with God has pushed me through this because I know that this situation may suck, but there's going to be a positive. Because when I was going to school, I was actually going to school to the College of Southeastern to be a counselor. So like that side of me saying, hey, God's going to use this to help somebody out in the future.
Right.
So if you are, just know, I'm going to say it. Yes, it sucks.
Yeah.
And it never gets easier. But you can also find positives in that, and it will grow you as a person.
Yeah.
Because whether it's your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister, and I know people that have lost a parent, and luckily my friend, she lost her mom not too long ago, and she has been a huge help with me with like the grieving process. And I would say don't grieve alone. Find really somebody that is good, that will encourage you. Even if you're not a believer, there's somebody around you that's going to pick you up. And just not let you be alone, because that's when it's the worst. Is when you're alone.
That's really good.
So like I try to, either go hang out with Noah or his future brother-in-law or somebody, because I don't want to be alone. And not having my dad, because he was my best friend. And so I'm a lot like him. Good and bad ways. But like I said, just don't do life alone. If you're in that situation, really don't. I know it's easy to isolate yourself, but don't do it.
That's huge. And I think that people can get caught in that. I know in a lot less like weighing situations, whenever I would get like super, super down on a situation, it's easy to want to seclude and just like try and cope by yourself. But I've learned in situations where I do that and I shut myself off from people, I'm going to stay in a constant state of depression that not only like sits with me in those moments, but the longer that I hold on to it, the more and more of a wall that's building up inside of myself that later is going to have to get torn down anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing I will say, like one thing that has helped me, and I would encourage it because I knocked it for so long, don't count out therapy. Literally really seek professional help. Like I've always struggled with depression and anxiety even before this, and I was going to therapy before that to deal with some issues that I have. It's good to have that like friend, I guess, that like doesn't have a side, unbiased, couldn't think of the word there. Thank you. But that unbiased opinion, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
They know how the brain works, and they know like the grieving process and all that stuff, or like how like your addiction, like if you're struggling with something, they know the inner workings of it. And even getting on medicine, like I can openly, honestly, like I'm on 2 different depression and anxiety medicines, and they are a tremendous help.
Right.
I would hopefully like to get off of it eventually, but
for sure.
For right now, while I'm going through this, don't count it out. Like, go seek help.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and especially a lot of the people that I know stay connected with content and stuff, or keep up with me, are a lot of people who are like faith-based people. They are very much like followers of Jesus, proclaimed followers of Jesus, and so what I want to like hit on, one, no matter who you are in a faith perspective, that's a huge thing of like. Therapy for some people it doesn't work, and like I get that, but it does create incredible amounts of help, and people who are trained in that area to be able to give next steps for you to be able to grow, it's huge. But then also specifically to people who are followers of Jesus, like know that God created people, that God created opportunity for people to be able to get better in areas. And that does look like therapy sometimes. Sometimes it may look like for a season you're taking some medication. Now you don't want to build dependency on that medication in order to feel happy.
That's true.
But like, don't count that stuff out, because you have some people, and like especially like around here where we live in North Carolina, there's a lot of people. It's just like, oh, well, just pray about it and it'll go away. Which I will stand here and like shout to the rooftops at how much I believe prayers and like the foundational truth of like, hey, we need to be seeking God, communicating with God,
exactly,
and allowing Him to provide healing and clarity. But also, God not only gives us the opportunity to communicate with Him in prayer on issues for healing, but He gives us next steps like talking to people, like being able to reach out and to connect with people in our darkest of moments. And so don't be that guy of just go and pray about it and it'll all get better, because there's practical steps.
I was that guy.
Yeah, for sure. Like, don't just use that as a cop out, and really, really intentionally, if you're having issues, if you're going through something, reach out and figure out some people to be able to help you with something. So like that's a huge point. I love that.
And of course I've reached out to my church family, and they have also been a help, but just to give me that next step, I wanted like a professional help. So you know, I always dismissed it because like, oh, I can just bring it to God, which I still do. Like, don't get me wrong. 100%. That is the foundation. Like, I'm going through the Bible right now. I've actually never read it in full. So me and some people at church are going through it and reading. Thank God we just got out of Leviticus, because that was that was rough.
It was trouble.
But still, like that's the foundation, of course. But also seeking that professional help is always really good.
Yeah, that's really huge. And so you've mentioned that. You even said before, I've loved your openness with me personally, and I'm sure like you don't mind talking through it now. Let me know, like we can change that. We can even cut it out. But compared to, you mentioned you were struggling with it even before your dad passing away. Talk about like some of the effects that anxiety and with your mental health, like how that's affected you in the past, but then some practical things that you've brought up a few things now with going to therapy, but what's been some practical things that have helped you to be able to grow in those situations where you do feel super anxious?
Well, biggest thing, like we did hit on, music. Music has always been, no matter what my faith was, has been a foundational help. Whatever it is, like my music taste has grown and developed over time.
Right.
And so that's always been a help. And like now, or like going out and working out, like I remember like getting up and going to Planet Fitness at like 11 o'clock at night and just going to work out because I'm anxious, but I need to do something active.
Right.
And I remember our former worship pastor, when I was really struggling with it, like pulled me aside one night after group and was like, if you ever feel this, because I struggle with anxiety too, get up, do laps around your house. Something.
Yeah.
Or just walk around your room.
Yeah.
He's like, don't sit still.
Yeah.
And so like I adopted that, and that's helped me.
Yeah.
And like even with disc golf, if feeling that way, and of course that's just kind of a new thing,
Right.
But in the past, it's mostly just been music to help me through.
Yeah.
My anxious times, or when I'm sad, just listen to something encouraging.
Yeah.
Or just sitting there talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, that's huge. I remember some practicals because I'd really had a season. It was I say a season. It was like probably a year and a half or even 2 years maybe. You may be able to give me a definite too, but to where I had a lot of like anxiety, just a lot of anxiousness, tension, like moments where like I would be in a weird moment and like the slightest little thing would be said and my chest would get obnoxiously tight. I couldn't breathe. Like I would begin to like sweat. I would just not know what to do and where it came from. And in those moments, like I didn't know what it was. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was weird. And then whenever I'd actually acknowledged it, I was able to take some necessary steps, learn things, grow, went to the doctor, figured out some things to do there. And thankfully now, like it's probably been 2 years now that I haven't
probably 2.
I haven't had those issues anymore, which has been incredible. Like thank God, thank the people that God placed in my life. But super practical things, and people have asked me before what helped me in that, and very practical. This is very not over spiritual at all. Like this is very practical stuff that helped me. One of the big things was getting a full night's sleep, like getting a full 7 to 8 hours. And one of the triggers for that, this is going to sound really weird, and if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work, but it worked for me. One of the triggers for that was I went through a whole like a year entirely to where I wasn't drinking nearly as many soft drinks, caffeine stuff. And I would do Monday through Thursday, I would only drink water. Friday and Saturday, I could drink one soft drink a day. That was it. And then Sunday, it was kind of like do whatever. But as I did that, it was as if it like cleansed my body of a lot of stuff because I drank a lot of soft drink. I was a huge Dr. Pepper fan, like addicted to it. But I cut it out. And whenever I cut it out, I got a much better night's sleep, which in turn helped my anxiety. But then a little bit of a deeper one, this is more of an emotional thing that helped me, was I had, in a stage of my life, I had people who were in my life who were not necessarily bad people, but they weren't healthy for the season that I was in.
Right.
And so I had to cut them out. There were some people that it just naturally, I didn't even have to say anything to. It's just like, hey, I stopped being the first one to text them, and then we just eventually stopped talking. But I remember there was 2 people I specifically had to say, I can't, like, in this current season of my life, I can't have you in it because I don't foresee us pushing each other to where we need to be at in life. And in doing that, that was probably the biggest relief of anxiety on my life, like ever. And so those were big things that really helped me in that season. And then the spiritual, there was a practical of the caffeine, emotional of cutting out friends. And then the spiritual, there was a lot of things that I'd been holding on to from past church hurt or from bad relationships that I'd had that I had to let go and just be like, God, I can't deal with this. I forgive people who have wronged me. I ask that you forgive me for things that I've done wrong. And then even reaching out to people that I did do wrong to and saying, hey, forgive me for doing, fill in the blank. And so those were 3 big things, practical, emotional, and spiritual that I did. And ever since then, man, like I haven't had any issues like that. And so just definitely wanted to pick your brain with that of what were some practicals that helped. And so.
Yeah, and like in this season, like you're talking about like cutting in and out of people. Like I had recently cut somebody out of my life, just like some crazy stuff happened between me and this person. And then when my dad died, I actually reached out to him just to let him know because he knew him and he really liked him. So I reached out to him and he responded back almost immediately and, told me he heard and stuff like that. Then we just like rekindled.
Yeah,
and it's been like the hugest weight lifted off of my chest. Yeah. And like I had told him literally everything that I have said to him and about him. Yeah. Just like I was like, here's what I hope you can forgive me. And of course I said absolutely. Yeah. And all that stuff. And like it was mutual and we're back being friends. Yeah. It's been awesome.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that. And just to hit on that point again, like there can be people in your life that are bad for you. Like point blank.
Absolutely.
And you need to cut them out point blank. But then like I mentioned, they may not be bad people. Like, they're not doing anything to necessarily try and pull you in a direction that's wrong. But if it's somebody that's not pushing you, just to not to preach too much right here, but like, if they're not pushing you in the direction that God has intended for you, then like they don't need to be there. And so
yeah, they absolutely do not need to be there.
Yeah, and just remembering that, like, I love that illustration of, for that season that you were in, he was not intended for it. But now that doesn't mean that coming back around that you guys won't reconnect and become really good friends again. And so I think that's huge. And so I think that's a great point for the listener of just making sure, like, in order for you to like step into the full, like the fullness of what God has for you in a season, it may look like cutting out people who are not providing insight or encouragement or next steps or direction in that area. And so I think that's really huge, man. So I love that a ton. But I think it's been really, really cool to just sit and to chat. And I know for sure we'll probably we'll probably continue to talk more in the future on this space, on this podcast, and love being able to have like some friends on, especially on these first few episodes, of people who I'm close to. But a big thing that I would love, because you are an incredibly talented photographer, you're learning you like to dabble in tons of new things you like to learn. And so I would love for you to be able to let the people know what's ways that they can stay connected with you on socials, anything like that, to where after they get off the podcast, they can connect with you and keep up with what you're doing.
Right. So I'll just like go ahead and say, like, I'm going through a rebranding process. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at whoishheybreezy. And that's where I'm going to be pretty much all the time right now. And I'll post some content there. And just for right now, because I'm shifting gears from not just being a photographer, but being, content creator. I want to dabble in music, graphic design, everything. So like I want to kind of ditch the photography side of the page. And of course, I'll keep everyone posted. But if you want to follow me there, I would love to engage with you. I want to connect with you. And also make some cool posts there. Most of the time, it's really light and heartwarming. You might see me on stories playing disc golf or whatever, music. That's mostly what I post about, or just shows I'm watching. Just to be kind of a lighthearted type of thing.
Yeah, I love that, man. And once again, thank you for coming and hanging out, man, and just chatting through a ton of stuff. I love you to death. You're one of my dearest friends, and so I definitely wanted the people that connect with content and stuff to be able to hear kind of like what has been going on, especially recently, and then like how incredibly positive you are in that. You're just an incredible light, like in my life, but then I know in so many other people. So I definitely wanted to be able to sit and have that conversation with you, man. So
yeah, I appreciate it, man. Anytime. I will love. If you give me an opportunity to talk about something I love, I'm just going to do it. There's no question.
I'm going to talk whether you give me a microphone or not.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, hey, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Be sure, once again, if you're watching through YouTube, subscribe to the page. If you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to continue to stay tuned there, subscribe there. If you want to keep up with my personal page on Instagram, it's Noah C. Black, NOAHC BLACK. And if you want to keep up with the podcast page, it's Creative Corner Podcast on Instagram. We thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.